Howdy, folks. Mr. Reardon here. I'd like to walk you through the first of our topics related to argumentation, and that is claims. Before we jump into claims, though, I want to say a few things about just the big picture of where we are in AP English language. First semester, we focused on rhetorical analysis. Rhetorical analysis was really all about reading other people's arguments, paying attention to the choices they made in their arguments in order to achieve their rhetorical purposes. And then, of course, once you were able to do that in a sort of abstract way through annotation and by learning, through learning all the aspects of rhetorical situation and a wide range of rhetorical strategies authors might use, you then learned a structured uh, approach to writing an essay about exactly that, which is what you'll need to do on the AP Lang exam. Second semester, we're shifting to argumentation. I like to draw this bright line between argumentation and rhetorical analysis, even though they are obviously related. I think argumentation is really focused on you building your own arguments, and so that's why it just makes sense that we sort of transition from rhetorical analysis to argumentation and see them as different topics, even though they're obviously connected. So continuing this big picture, second semester, you're going to learn how to write the argument and synthesis essays in the style that's expected of you on the AP Lang exam. You're also going to learn the skills, like the building blocks of the skills you'll need to do argumentation and synthesis at the college level. You will, no matter what you study, no matter when you go to college, if you pursue your education beyond high school, you will do synthesis. In fact, I would argue that synthesis and forms of synthesis and research are the primary kind of writing that you'll be doing when you're in college. Analytical writing is very much a sort of high school thing, and most writing in college is not analysis. It is synthesis, it's argumentation, making your own claims based on what other people have written, using what other people have written for support and evidence in pursuit of your own goals. So I want you to leave AP Lang being able to do that. Before we can jump headlong into argumentation and looking at the AP argument essay and thinking through how you should approach those questions, we need to talk about a couple concepts. I see these concepts as a nexus between rhetorical analysis, looking at other people's arguments, and uh, argumentation. That is, writing your own arguments. And those two concepts are claims and evidence. Now, of course, on some fundamental level, you know exactly what claims and evidence are already. It's review. But we're going to go a little more in depth than I imagined you have gone in the past in looking at these concepts. So, the In class, folks who were here on Thursday, the what was that? The 6th of January. People who were here Thursday the 6th learned this, did some practice, and then are going to go over that practice today when this is being recorded, which is Monday the 10th of January. And then there will be a little quiz. If you're watching this, that means that you were probably not in class, and so your timeline is going to look different. Once you're comfortable with the content, you've had a chance to practice. Maybe you've had a chance to check in with me as well and ask any questions that you have, or check in with a classmate. That's also totally fine. Then you can come to me, come to 219 lunch after school during prime, and make up the quiz you missed. All right, so what is a claim? It is a statement that's arguable. Now, what do I mean by arguable? An arguable statement is one that can be supported with evidence that is external to an individual. So, evidence that is not just, that's not only located within the brain of a single person. Arguability is what distinguishes claims from just plain old facts. That is, statements presenting basic information that you can easily verify with multiple reliable sources. And arguability is also what distinguishes claims from opinions. And those are just statements of personal preference for which you can't find any independently verifiable evidence. like the only evidence that exists for that statement is within a person's brain. It's like their own subjective preference for something. Now you're going to see terms like assertion and proposition in different places, especially if you end up studying formal rhetoric and formal logic in some other context other than AP Lang. These other terms are often used. There is this sort of interesting hyperlink between rhetoric and logic as we look at it in AP Lang, and proofs as you have probably done them if you've taken geometry before. So those two concepts historically were actually much more closely related than they are in academia today. And so the idea of like making a proposition and then proving it logically is uh, inherently connected to the idea of argumentation. And that's why proposition is actually a synonym of claim as we're using it here. Okay, so we have the statement arguability spectrum here. I want you to start by looking at the left-hand side. On the left-hand side here, you have, I'm going to click, oops, you have the side where there is no unbiased evidence available. So zero evidence. The only evidence that could be found is within an individual's brain, so it's not independently verifiable. These are opinions, statements that start with things like I think, I believe, I feel, I am, right? That kind of thing. Now these indirect or these statements of personal preference can be indirect. If someone says something like "This soup is nasty" or "Boba's delicious," those kinds of statements, those are opinions. That's what they sound like. Some examples: I don't like the death penalty. Bakersfield is my favorite city, or I hate that I have to be 21 to drink alcohol. Right? These are all statements of opinion, of preference. They're subjective. There's no independently verifiable evidence, so they're not claims. Over here, so I want you to now hop over to the other side and look at the end here. This is facts. Literally are unbiased evidence. Like that's what they are. So because they're not arguable, they're just easily verifiable statements. They're facts. Now, facts are generally they generally end up serving the role of evidence in claims, right, or in argumentation. So they're not claims, they're not arguable, but they're just facts that you can use to actually support claims. If you can do a quick Google search and you can find a piece of information very quickly, and there's very little disagreement about, or no disagreement about that statement, then it's probably a fact. Now, I do want to point out that there is this little space here, this little space between claims we'll talk about in a second and facts. There are some statements that you might actually end up calling a claim of fact, like it is an arguable statement, but there's still so much consensus around it that many people take it as fact. You'll also see writers make arguments presenting things as facts that actually other people might consider a claim of fact and might consider up for debate, even though the writer in that particular context is treating it as a fact. And so you're going to see that, and that's actually a way to attack an argument, is by saying something like that those things there that are being passed off as facts, they're actually not facts. That's a claim of fact, that's debatable. Here's a bunch of resources that actually refutes what this person is saying. So with that, some examples of facts. The death penalty is still in use in Oklahoma. The average rent in Bakersfield is less expensive than the average rent in Palo Alto. Quick Google search could give you that information. There were 448 alcohol transports at Harvard University in 2019. All right, so claims are everything in the middle. There is unbiased evidence available, but it's not just evidence. It is an arguable statement. There may be unbiased evidence depending on the validity of the claim, and how much there is sort of determines where it would fall on this spectrum, and that itself is actually debatable. But I really think the key idea here is you've got opinions on one side and facts on the other, and everything else is claims. You can think about this. The death penalty does not deter violent crime in Oklahoma. Claim of fact, right? It is like you could debate this one way or the other. It's arguable. Present evidence for each side of the for the debate. Now, Palo Alto has failed to provide sufficient housing for its workforce. Then the minimum age to purchase alcohol should remain 21 across the United States. So we have again claims that could be debated one way or another. If someone were considering that, hey, maybe we should change the alcohol age consumption down to 18, then you could have that conversation. What's better, 18 or 21? All right. So this is a little practice. Here's what you should do. You should pause the video and either on the closed notes that you could be looking at, or just on a sheet of paper, you should try organizing each of these statements into opinion, claim, or fact. Your additional practice and also the quiz will ask you to do this for a few statements, and so you should be able to do this. We'll go over the answers in just a second. All right, so first one here, owners of SUVs should be required to pay an energy surcharge. That's a claim. It's arguable, it's debatable. You could argue either side. There's plenty of evidence for both sides. Charter schools are an alternative to public schools. That's a fact. There are charter schools. They exist. You can do one or the other. It's just a fact. Number 3, Ronald Reagan was the most charismatic president of the 20th century. Whether or not he was the most charismatic is up for debate. Who knows? Maybe some people think Teddy Roosevelt was the most charismatic president of the 20th century, and you would need to cite evidence in order to support claims one way or the other. Number 4, requiring students to wear school uniforms improves school spirit. That's a claim. You could argue either way. Number 5, the terms global warming and climate change express differing perspectives, each worth considering on a complex issue. This little non-essential element in here, each worth considering, is actually what makes this a claim. That they are worth considering is the claim in this case. The United States federal deficit for 2020 was $3.13 trillion. That's just a fact. You can Google. If you Google United States federal deficit, you're going to get that number immediately. Number 7, Moroccan dry-cured black olives are delicious. That's an opinion. That's just somebody's perspective on Moroccan dry-cured black olives. Number 8, Stanford University was founded on November 11th, 1885. That's just a fact. If you Google Stanford founding, you're going to get that information. Print newspapers are unlikely to survive the 21st century. That is a claim. You can argue that either way. Will they survive? Will they not survive? Number 10, art museums are boring. That's subjective. That's an opinion. 2024 Summer Olympics will be in Paris. Yes, they are. That's a fact. Plagiarism is a serious problem in today's schools. That is a claim. You can argue that one way or the other. What even constitutes a serious problem? You have to make that argument one way or the other. All right, continuing on here. There is a sort of a division of this presentation into 2 chunks. The first chunk we just looked at was the difference between claims, facts, and opinions. And then the second chunk of this presentation is really specifically about the types of claims that exist. There are 3 types of claims. They are claims of fact, claims of value, and claims of policy. And so we're going to talk through each of these kinds of claims. Claim of fact. A claim of fact argues that something is true or not true. They assert that a condition has existed or exists or will exist. Claims of fact are distinguishable from facts because facts are easily verifiable by consulting multiple reliable sources. Claims of fact are arguable because you could pull evidence from multiple sources that support and that refute the claim. It just depends what your perspective is and how you want to go about arguing it. Yes, there can be some gray area occasionally between a claim of fact and a fact. As I was mentioning earlier, some writers will pass off claims of fact as facts, especially if they think their audience is likely to accept those statements as fact. But you could break down an argument by poking holes in that assumption. Claims of fact often present cause-effect relationships, like X caused Y, or Y was the result of X. And so look for that. If you see that, it's probably a claim of fact. Generally, we support claims of fact with factual evidence. So you would need to ask yourself, could I use data or facts to support this claim? I'll also say one more thing. Claims of fact are all often binary. That is, like, yes, this is true. No, this is not true. Yes, this exists. No, this doesn't exist. Right? So if you see one that's very binary, claim of fact is probably the right choice. Some examples of claims of fact. Humans can be genetically predisposed to addiction. Many food allergies can be linked to high levels of environmental cleanliness humans did not evolve to accommodate. The smartphone completely changed the way people live their daily lives. School closures due to COVID-19 led to a decrease in overall teenage mental health. And house cats are apex predators in many urban and suburban communities. Each of these, in one way or another, is a claim of fact. Can humans be genetically predisposed to addiction? Yes, no. Find evidence to support that, one way or the other. Many food allergies can be linked to environmental cleanliness that we humans did not evolve to accommodate. Can they be linked, or can they not be linked? This one has that cause-effect relationship I mentioned. So does this first one, sort of indirectly. The smartphone completely changed the way people live their daily lives. That is, again, smartphone cause, the changes to the way people live effect. School closures cause decrease in overall teenage mental health effect. I think you get the idea. Next type of claim is a claim of value. Claims of value make a moral or evaluative argument. They assert the extent to which an idea, policy, or action or state of being is good or bad, right or wrong, desirable or undesirable. Now, claims of value are distinguishable from opinions because opinions, in arising from personal preference alone, cannot be argued using independently verifiable evidence. Again, the opinions come from your subjective personal preference, and there's no outside evidence that could be used to debate them one way or another. Now, claims of value can be comparative, that is, X is superior to Y, or they can be absolute. X is helpful, good, successful, worthwhile, unhelpful, undemocratic, arbitrary, healthy, etc. Any kind of adjective, essentially. Now, here is really how you tell the difference between claims of fact and claims of value. If you're trying to make an argument with a claim of value, or you're looking at a claim of value, you can expect that you as a writer, or you as a reader, or excuse me, let me say that again. You can expect that a writer will often establish criteria for what makes something good or bad, or arbitrary or not arbitrary, or successful or worthwhile or unhelpful, right? And they will then, those criteria are very nuanced, and there's a wide range of approaches to developing those criteria. And then they'll apply those criteria to specific people, places, and things. Those claims of fact are very binary, right? Like, this exists, it doesn't exist. There's no middle ground. Whereas if you claim something that is successful, there is middle ground. You can define what constitutes success, and someone could debate for you what constitutes success. And you have that nuance there. That makes the difference between a claim of fact and a claim of value. If you see any words that suggest this need for criteria to be defined, or suggest comparison, or absolute, goodness or badness, or absolute evaluation, so words like adjectives, good, fast, healthy, helpful, democratic, arbitrary, Comparative words like better, faster, healthier, or superlatives like best or fastest or healthiest, right? All of those would signal a claim of value. Some examples: Bakersfield is a better place to live than Fresno. Making abortion hard for people to access is harmful to American society. Live direct instruction is more successful than video lessons when it comes to teaching writing. Throughout his first year, Joe Biden has been an effective president of the United States, and using an outdoor compost pile is the best way to dispose of plant-based food scraps. You have better here. Like, what constitutes a better place to live? Like, you have to define that. And there's a lot of different criteria you could use for that. That's what makes this a claim of value. What constitutes harm to a society? And why exactly would making abortion hard for people to access be harmful? There's a range of approaches to that. It's not categorically harmful or categorically not harmful. There's some nuance there. Same thing goes for, that was the bell. The same thing goes for being successful or not successful. Same thing goes for being effective or not effective. Same thing goes for being, the best way to do something, right? You have to define that. You have to clarify exactly what you mean. And there's a wide range of approaches for being the best way to do something, for being effective, for being successful. The last type is actually the easiest for people to identify typically, and that is a claim of policy. So claims of policy propose a change or propose no change to existing policy. If you see any form of the word should or must in an arguable statement, then it's a good sign that you have a claim of policy. There's also synonyms like ought to that could signal a claim of policy. Now, when I say policy in the context of a claim of policy, it doesn't necessarily mean like official institutional policy. It just means any like rule that somebody lives by or acts on, right? So a policy in the broadest sense of the word. Some examples: Pally must get rid of 7-period Mondays. Like that's right now we have 7-period Mondays. That is a Pally policy, and so if you suggest they need to go away, that's a claim of policy, and you'd have to support that. PAUSD should offer students MacBooks instead of Chromebooks as part of their one-to-one policy. So again, we've got a should there, and this is a claim of something that Pally should or PAUSD should do. You should join a church or similar organization, even if you're not particularly religious. So this is a personal policy that is being suggested, and someone would need to debate that. You ought to use Lyft instead of Uber. Again, a personal policy when you need to a ride somewhere. All right. And then, of course, you have the old claim of policy that's all around us all the time, hashtag capitalism. That is, you should buy X, right? You should buy something. Anytime you have an ad where they're trying to convince you to buy something, it's really an implicit claim of policy that you need to buy a certain thing, right? So often you're going to see that writers like to layer claims in a specific way, and if you understand the way the claims are often layered, this can help get you through difficult readings and start to recognize patterns in nonfiction when these patterns appear in your readings. So you can see the pyramid here. On the bottom, you've got facts. Actually, I'm going to start from the top. I changed my mind here. So you have a claim of policy at the top. Often there will be a claim of policy like we should get rid of 7-period days or something. Below that, there would be a claim of value that is supporting that claim of policy, like 7-period days are not conducive to learning, or they're not an effective way to use time. Then below that, you would have a claim of fact, or some claims of fact that go with that, like Coming up with an example off the top of my head is hard, but you can imagine, how a someone could then state claims of fact, like, actually, something is coming up with some teachers don't teach anything new on Mondays, on 7 period days, because the periods are so short. Something like that. That's a claim of fact. And then there would be even more specific facts that would go below that. Like, in this particular class at that particular time, this teacher did this and that. So you can see how that works, how these claims layer on top of each other. There are a couple examples here. Claim of policy: you should not support Walmart's profit mission by shopping there. The claim of value that supports that: not offering people a living wage for the sake of corporate profit is not good for the economy. A claim of fact supports that claim of value. Wages and benefits for Walmart employees are lower than retail industry averages. And then the possible fact that goes with that is that Walmart's minimum wage nationwide is $12 per hour, compared to the $15 you likely see at Amazon and Target and other, you do see at Amazon and Target and other competing retailers. There's another example here that you can take a moment to read on your own. So, the in the closed notes that you should have in front of you, there is an additional practice, and you can check those answers by looking at the notes for class 2. So you'll want to go into the class 2 summary in Schoology, and you can check those answers. And then there is a practice assignment. It's a PDF, also linked in the class 2 summary. If you have a printer, you can print it out and do it. If printing at home is not possible, then of course you can just you can do it on a separate sheet of paper, and then check the answers once the answer key is posted. It will be posted in the on Monday, today, or in the evening, or perhaps tomorrow at some point. So look for that in Schoology in the weeks 1 and 2 folder. Thank you, folks.